Hello, everyone. How's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with another wonderful talk-in vid. This one is going to be my third and final video in the trilogy where I talk about the album and how it relates to the music industry in today's climate. In the first one, I talked about the right amount of time between albums, if there is such a thing. And the second one I talked about is the classic album release cycle still relevant? But I thought I would save, the best for last and ask the question, are these still relevant? And no, I don't mean vinyl records specifically. I, of course, am talking about albums. And what do I mean by an album? I mean it in the colloquial sense, in the sense of basically a collection of songs written and recorded and released roughly, all at the same time by an artist to try to make some sort of a cohesive musical artistic statement. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the album and kind of where it is now and, if they still matter or not. Basically, the term was coined in fairly early days in the music industry, back when records had much shorter playing times. I guess this was probably back in maybe the Victrola era. I don't know. There were shellac records, and they came in basically a booklet with various pages in it that looked like a photo album. Hence, the origin of the term album, and it's something we still use now. So, albums really took off in the music industry in the mid 60s. That was the start of the album era. And it went for about 4 decades. It really started to wind down in the mid 2000s. And what the album era was basically was when albums were the dominant uh, way people purchased and listened to music, right? Uh, so, I mean, almost everybody who really listened to music for 40 years bought albums left and right. Um, Obviously, with the rise of the internet, album sales are now in the toilet compared to where they were. They're not completely dead yet, but they're certainly not what they used to be. So uh, the question is, in this modern era of streaming, YouTube downloads, all that stuff, do albums still matter at all? Well, I'm going to say yes and no. Uh, and the reason I'm going to say that is, well, I think really it's partially no, because I've noticed that casual music fans, since time immemorial, have never really been big album collectors, right? They'll like maybe, a song or two from an album, and that's pretty much it, or a few songs from an artist, but they won't really, dig into an artist's work, right? So I'd say for the normies, right, I would say no, the album is not relevant anymore at all. But to be fair, I don't think it ever was. I think the only reason so many normies bought albums during the album era is it was, they didn't have the internet as an alternative, right? So if they wanted to hear those few songs they liked, they simply had to buy the album. It was the only way to hear those songs. Yeah, singles were definitely a thing, but singles started to fall out of favor a bit. Definitely in the late 60s, albums really started outselling singles, and the single market and then after, vinyl kind of went to be not dominant like it was, that really killed off the singles market. So for a long time, albums just had everything to themselves, and that's why so many people bought albums. Even like people who weren't hardcore music fans were buying albums just because they wanted to hear those songs, and they didn't really have a choice. Well, with the rise of the internet, obviously now, to hear any music at all that you want, you don't have to buy a single thing. You certainly don't have to buy an album to hear songs you want to hear. That's not a requirement anymore. So for those people, absolutely, streams, downloads, and YouTube are good enough. No doubt. No doubt about that. But for people who are, really into music and care about it even a little bit, most folks like that kind of want to hear, at least for me, I want to hear that musical artistic statement in full if I can. I want to be in the head as much as I can, be in that headspace, listen to the recording, see where a song falls in sequence, all this stuff that's generally associated with albums. I still appreciate it. I don't know if that's just a function of my age or my obsession about music, or probably both. So I would say that the album is absolutely still relevant as an artist's primary artistic statement. So yes, and just because we're in the internet age doesn't mean that loses relevancy. Here's a comparison you could make. You can watch, a YouTube short film, we'll call it, something that's like, 5 to 10 minutes long, right? And it's some sort of a style, like it can be a comedy, action, whatever. Something is styled after a movie, right? And you can tell a story in 5 to 10 minutes on YouTube. You absolutely can if you're good at editing, producing, blah, 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 right? But watching something like that doesn't compare to watching, say, an hour and a half to a 2-hour movie, right? It's just not the same. So I would say listening to a single song is like watching that, 5 to 10 minute, short thing on YouTube. And listening to an album is obviously more like, watching a movie, right? So because you can do one doesn't mean you give up the other one. So that's really how I feel about albums. I think they're still relevant artistically, and also for an artist, if they're not producing albums, what's their legacy going to be when they hang up their hats and go off into the sunset? If they don't have albums, there will be nothing to remember them by. Just simply, concerts aren't going to be enough, because a concert is a temporary experience. Yeah, sure, you can record a concert, but then it's just a live album. But a concert in and of itself is simply an event that lasts, depending on the artist, anywhere from an hour to, 2.5, 3 hours, whatever, and that's done and over. Never to be seen again, whereas an album is etched into permanence because it's recorded and it's produced, it's put out there for people. So without an album, they have no legacy. Now, the argument could be made, why don't they just, since album sales aren't what they used to be, they could just record singles and just release song after song after song. Yeah, that's true. And artists absolutely can do that. But then we lose that artistic statement that I was talking about earlier. So, so yeah, I think the album is still relevant for the reasons I said. But again, I don't know if it's my bias towards album, if it's my age, my obsession, what. It could be a number of things. As always, please let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I'd like to hear from everyone. I know that the majority of my audience is going to say, yeah, I absolutely listen to albums. I listen to albums all the time. I prefer albums. I get that. I do too. But and feel free to put that down. Put down why you like albums. I definitely want to hear from people who like albums, but I'd also be interested to hear from people with a contrary kind of opinion on that. And of course, I'm always, always, always especially interested in hearing from young people, because you're going to have a totally different perspective than, folks my age or older, because you didn't necessarily grow up in the same era and you don't have the same attachment to it. Yada, yada, yada. So, that's pretty much it. You guys know what to do with all of the, likes, dislikes, all that crap, whatever you want to do. Please, please, please keep the discussion going in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you guys next time. Live long and prosper.